We are in a strange place in society. We are spinning in a deep cosmic night, a dark cycle, a Kali Yuga. This is the time in our cosmic procession where the shadow rules. It rises to the surface not because it's powerful in itself, but because light is not obvious. This is the upside down. This inversion we are living in is a vacuum, not a truth. There's a difference. We can't put our phones down and stop looking at ourselves or one another, and yet we've never felt so alone. We watch TV shows about all the problems in the world, and yet we do nothing. And while we look at the political turmoil, environmental crisis, human crisis, we find ourselves screaming into a midnight that has no dawn. And we all feel it. Why? How can we have so much information all around us and yet be so unaware? I'll tell you why. We are looking in the wrong direction. We look to politics and broken governmental systems that have proven themselves corrupt to the point that it's insulting and strange. Because of this, society continues to wobble and degrade. We are short-sighted and not realizing that the very root of our issues in society is the occult. The hidden spiritual practices and beliefs of people in power, and also our own energy, our own occult aspects that we're not taking responsibility for, our thoughts, our emotions, and our spirit that we have abandoned, where we are focusing that energy inadvertently. Now, you may not believe this. You may be uncomfortable with the shadow and serious conversations, but it's time to take a breath and realize that it doesn't matter what you believe. The most powerful people in the world have occult beliefs, and that is undeniable. Not only do they believe it, they live it, and it is all around us. We take part in rituals, and we don't even know it. We have no chance in creating lasting change unless the spirit is addressed, our spirituality. The shadow and the light. New eras are born from the spirit and from truth. That is the root, and everything begins there. My disclaimer in this is that I'm not interested in shocking you with gruesome images of dark occult practices. If you want, you can go and Google those things and they'll pop up on your computer in 5 seconds. But you won't find them here. You won't find me outing people with no solutions. That only adds to the problem. My goal with this series is to begin to start a conversation about exactly how this works and what we can do about it, because this has been going on for too long. So, without any further ado, let's start at the very beginning. What is the occult? Wikipedia says the occult is from the Latin word occultus, meaning clandestine, hidden, or secret. It is knowledge of the hidden or knowledge of the paranormal. The dictionary says, as a noun, it is the supernatural, mystical, or magical beliefs, practices, or phenomena. As a verb, it means to cut off from view by imposing something, to make it occult, to make it hidden. So essentially, no matter how you swing it, the occult means hidden. Now, let's go deeper. What exactly is hidden? Since the beginning of time, man has tried to record the laws of the universe in a way that we can understand. As humans are part of the cosmos, and our understanding of the universe and natural law helps us understand ourselves. We are inseparable from nature, and our soul functions as nature does, as the cosmos does, as above, so below. Getting a grasp on the big picture creates a through line within us. It becomes our bridge back to spirit and the higher dimensions from which we originated. These explorations into our nature were condensed into symbols, myths, teachings, and rituals. We call these profound tools of wisdom. Symbols, myths, teachings, and rituals. That's what we have condensed our exploration into the cosmos into. And that exploration into the cosmos and creating myths and symbols, that is a through line for us now that we use in our consciousness, and it is called the occult. This work was done by our ancestors, and it forms an invisible thread that not only connects us with our spirit, but joins all eras of time. As our mind is limited, we cannot comprehend the entire universe in one lifetime, in one perspective. So certain symbols, myths, and teachings are mysterious by nature, not because they're evil, but because we're not designed to know everything all at once. Things feel hidden because the concepts are too huge for us in our current level of awareness. The occult is neutral symbols, myths, teachings, and rituals that helped our ancestors connect with and understand the universe, and that continue to help us connect with and understand the universe. What's interesting about the occult is that we see the same symbols popping up in all cultures. No matter how diverse or distant they may be, these symbols always seem to appear. For example, the X appears around intense spiritual events or technologies. It's seen in the Mayan culture, African cultures, European cultures, and even the modern era. We see the X appearing in certain spiritual technologies and specific places. The sun is another occult symbol. It appears very similarly across cultures that are not even connected. It appears that we have this archetypal language within us. We are born with it. It's as though it's our first language. The spiral is another example of our deep collective shared language. It often appears to represent the cosmos or the flow of life. So we have an inner language that's beyond spoken word and beyond the logical mind. It's even beyond culture. It's a through line. and we all have it. All of these symbols are archetypes, and we recognize them as part of the fabric of our own mind. And we also can look at them as the basis of language. So the occult can also be seen as the language of archetypes. In psychic development, symbols and archetypes is actually the way that spirit communicates and that our higher self communicates. So we can also look at symbols and archetypes and these occult symbols as a way in which spirit or our higher self communicates with us. It's as though we have evolved our spoken language from this occult language. So in a way, when we use the occult, we're just speaking an ancient language. We're just speaking the language that we spoke before we started speaking English or French or whatever language you want. This is our original language. It is the language before we fell into this density. But that's going a little deep, so we'll get back on track. The beauty of this type of deep understanding within us is that no matter how far we fall into the material world, a language would exist for our conscious mind once again to build a bridge back to the heavens, back to our higher self. The very purpose of the occult is to connect us with this higher mind, to nature, to have a relationship with the cosmos, to our spirit. In this way, the occult is maybe best described as a door into other worlds, not strange worlds, but our world, our inner world. And this brings us to why it is feared. But before we get into that, you can kind of get a sense as we're reshaping our ideas around what the occult is, we can kind of get a sense about how silly it is that these symbols and myths that actually really represent our own higher mind, our own higher self, our own, cognition would be negative. It shows us just how deeply we have forgotten ourselves. Our relationship with the occult today in society, our fear of it, shows us how deeply we've forgotten ourselves. It doesn't show us anything about the occult. So, we have established that the occult is neutral. As discussed, it is symbols, archetypes, myths. But if we look around in society, we see that for many, the occult is actually synonymous with evil. Many YouTube channels and social media accounts with good intentions lump neutral symbols and practices in with distorted and negative ones. So they lump what would be a neutral symbol in with something that is a symbol being used in a negative way, in a dark way. So they're mixing the dark occult with the healthy occult and saying they're the same thing. This leaves us more confused and more disconnected. This doesn't solve or prove anything other than the occult exists. But why do we assume the occult is evil? It actually has nothing to do with the occult and everything to do with the state of society. As we look around, we see humanity facing a devouring and regressive chaos. We see a society that is, in fact, very far from nature. We see a world engrossed in materialism and consumerism, one that gives very little thought to spirit or the inner world. It is also common for the soul today to be reduced to and smothered by dogma, either scientific dogma or religious dogma. In this obvious state of spiritual limitation, do we really believe we are seeing clearly at all? Especially something so important and ancient as the occult. The truth is, we fear the occult because we fear our own light. Many look into the mirror of the unknown and see their greatest fear, because that is how they function day to day to day, in a state of fear, in a state of surviving, repeatedly traumatized, on edge. And so, of course, the moment that you relax and you look inward, that's exactly what you're going to see. You're going to see your shadow. You're going to see your fear, because that's your dominant state. The moment we try to look into the unknown, the occult, our fears are reflected back to us, because the occult isn't just symbols and myths and rituals. It is a force. It's a spiritual force that mirrors to us who we are. When we allow our shadow to rule, it is the first image that we must face when we attempt to look inward or to look into higher realms. We have to go through our own selves. It's not something outside of us. The occult is not something outside of us. It is the connection with the energy within us and all around us, the energy in which everything is made. And it is our relationship to that, to ourselves and to nature, that we immediately see when we look at something as deep as the occult. This is the wisdom that our ancestors knew, but we have forgotten and oftentimes written off as ridiculous or foolish. But they knew this. We have forgotten to see the reflective process of the occult as a healing initiation, an opportunity for ego death, or the death of the parts of ourselves that no longer serve us. Instead, we see it and experience it as some kind of literal death, as a stress that will consume our already fragile existence. Because we don't connect with our inner world, with our spirit, the moment that we experience something that frightens us, we think it will destroy us because we are so ignorant about it. We have become so disconnected from our inner world, we no longer know how to interact with it. We fear ourselves. This is where we are. We desperately need to connect with our spirit, but we fear the process of connection and the healing that is necessary. When we get good at reading the occult, we can also decode what it means for others by how they are using it. But unless we venture into these deep waters, we'll never know, and we'll forever be chasing our tails, never getting to the root, never getting to the top. So, what is the occult? The occult is you, me, my ancestors, your ancestors, the sky, the earth, the flora, the fauna, the story of all life. It's a neutral language that we once all spoke, but that we have forgotten. A language so deep that by using it consciously, it reveals everything about ourselves, what we want to see and what we don't. Within the occult lies our magic, and we need to remember this and take it back. Our homework. Start to program yourself to think of the occult as a series of symbols, stories, and histories that belong to all of us. We have an unhealthy idea about what the occult is, many of us, so we have to sort of bring that back to neutral. To really bring it full circle to the understanding that this level of cognition and consideration no longer belongs to an exclusive group. And we're no longer going to be repelled by occult images or anything like that. We're going to look at it as a puzzle that we need to understand and decode, first as neutral symbols, and then we can analyze the people that are using it and their potential intentions around it. But first and foremost, we have to view the occult and symbols and myths as neutral. If you see a ritual or what you think may be a ritual, a symbol, a myth, immediately break it down to its archetypal significance. Remove the charge so that you can see it for its moving parts. This is called spiritual maturity, emotional maturity, mental maturity, to look at something and not immediately be reactive and engrossed in it, but to say, okay, what are the moving parts in this? What does this symbol mean? What does this symbol mean in a neutral sense, and what could it mean in a distorted sense? We're lucky enough to live in an age of information, so it's very easy to look up interpretations of symbols in this day and age. So we have to ask ourselves, what symbols are being used? How are the symbols interacting? What do you think the intention is? Is the intention to create chaos? Because when there's chaos, it means that there's an excess of energy, and that excess of energy gets channeled into that symbol and can be harvested by the people that put it there. More on this in other videos. But is this, in your opinion, used to create chaos? Or is it used to connect you with spirit and grow? And you'll get better and better at sensing how a archetype is used, or a ritual, or how a myth is being used, and the people that are using it. It really is a different language, and once we begin to occupy that part of ourselves, it becomes more and more difficult for others to harvest it or exploit it. So simply by doing this exercise, you're greatly limiting the amount of energy that goes into these things. But it's important to say to ourselves right here and right now that we now take back our history, our magic, our ancestors' magic, and our symbology. We are aware, and we are now watching with conscious eyes.